They never used the guest room on the ground floor. Even when the whole family was there, it stayed locked, untouched, undiscussed. I never thought to ask why. Until the weekend, I had to sleep in it. This happened earlier this year, in April. My cousin Laura's family owns this lake house down in North Carolina, right on the edge of a small, quiet lake surrounded by woods. Every summer, our families would gather there for a few days. Nothing fancy, just fishing, grilling, playing card games, peaceful stuff. But for some reason, no one ever stayed in the small guest room on the first floor. Even when we were crammed into that place with sleeping bags and air mattresses, that door always stayed closed. I never really questioned it. I figured maybe it was just used for storage or something. But that changed this past spring. Laura called me and asked if I could go down a day early to help her open up the house for the season. She had work and couldn't get there until the next morning, so I'd be spending one night there alone. I didn't mind. I had nothing going on and figured it'd be a quiet change of scenery. The drive from Virginia to the lake took about 3 hours. I got there in the late afternoon and let myself in with the key Laura had mailed me. The place was just how I remembered, calm, quiet, and slightly musty from being shut up all winter. I opened some windows, uncovered the furniture, and ran through a quick cleaning list Laura had left me. All easy stuff. When it came time to sleep, I went upstairs to pick a room, but they were all stuffy and covered in dust. I didn't feel like vacuuming or changing sheets, and the only clean room in the house seemed to be the little guest room downstairs. It even had fresh sheets and a working vent. So, I shrugged and texted Laura, "Crashing in the downstairs room tonight." She didn't reply. I figured she was already asleep. That night, I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone when I noticed how quiet it was. Like, unusually quiet. No creaks from the house, no wind through the trees, just this total stillness. It reminded me of the way everything sounds when you're underwater. Kind of heavy. Kind of wrong. I turned out the lamp and laid back, trying to ignore it. A few minutes later, I heard something. 3 knocks, slow, deliberate, coming from the wall behind the bed. I sat up straight. There was no window back there, and I was sure no one else was in the house. I got up, turned on the light, and pressed my ear to the wall. Nothing. I stood there for a minute, heart thumping in my chest. Eventually, I convinced myself it was just the house settling. I left the light on and got back in bed, but I barely slept. Laura arrived the next morning. I told her what happened, half joking, but with just enough edge in my voice that she could tell I was rattled. She paused, then said something weird. "That room gives my mom the creeps," she said. "She says it's always cold. My uncle gets dizzy in there. No one really sleeps in it." I asked her why. She shrugged. "I don't know. It's just one of those things in our family that we all kind of avoid without talking about." We dropped it and spent the afternoon cleaning and organizing. Later that day, we were digging around in the attic for summer supplies when we found a plastic bin marked Insurance Records, 2004. We almost tossed it, but curiosity got the better of us. Inside were photos, receipts, and some kind of claim paperwork that had been soaked in water at some point. Most of it was unreadable, but we could still make out the words property damage, fire, and below that, lakeside guest room, first floor. We both froze. I looked at Laura. Her face had gone pale. She had no idea what it meant. There hadn't been a fire in her lifetime, at least none she was told about. But the photos told a different story. They showed blackened walls, charred wood, and what looked like a burned-up bed frame. It was clearly that same guest room. The date on the claim was March 2004. We brought the box downstairs and showed it to her mom when she stopped by later. She took one look at the paperwork and just sat down. Then she told us. Back in 2004, Laura had a little cousin named Milo. He was 6 years old. One spring afternoon, he was napping in that downstairs guest room when an old space heater shorted and started a small fire. By the time anyone noticed, it was too late. The fire hadn't spread much, but Milo had died of smoke inhalation. The family quietly renovated the room, replaced the carpet and drywall, and never spoke about it again. Laura had never even heard the story. She was just a toddler when it happened, and I just slept in the same room where a 6-year-old boy had died. That night, I refused to sleep in there again. I took the couch in the living room. At around 2 a.m., Laura woke me up. Her face was pale. She said she'd heard something, knocking, from inside the guest room. We crept down the hallway, stopping outside the closed door. It was dead silent. Then, knock, knock, knock. Same rhythm, same spot. I reached for the doorknob and slowly opened it. The room felt colder than the rest of the house. Not just cooler, it had that heavy, hard-to-breathe chill you get from standing in a freezer. Everything looked the same as before. Bed neatly made, lamp still on. But then I noticed something I hadn't before. Above the bed hung an old family photo, one of those big framed ones with tons of kids and adults. In the corner of the photo, scribbled between two cousins, was a tiny faded face, drawn in pencil, smiling wide. The kind of face a child might doodle, only it hadn't been there before. We backed out slowly, shut the door, and didn't go near it again. Laura's parents sealed the room a week later, drywalled over the doorway. They told the rest of the family what happened. No one argued. I haven't been back to that lakehouse since. But some nights, when I'm half asleep, I still hear it. Faint knocking from behind the wall. And sometimes, when I dream, I see that same pencil-sketched face, smiling from just behind my shoulder, like he's still waiting in the room no one ever slept in. I never believed in ghost stories until the night I stayed alone at my family's beach house and the ocean went completely silent. Last summer, my parents had to leave town for a week, so they asked me to watch over our beach house on Cape Cod. The idea of being alone there was exciting, but also a little intimidating. The house had been in my family for decades, a weathered old place with salt-stained windows, faded paint peeling at the edges, and creaky floorboards that seemed to whisper every time I stepped on them. I arrived on a Friday afternoon, the air thick with the salty tang of the sea. Unpacking my bags, I felt an odd mix of freedom and unease. Being here alone meant no distractions, no interruptions, just me and the endless ocean. The house smelled like history. Old wood, dried seaweed, and the faint scent of sun-warmed salt air. That first evening, I decided to walk the beach as the sun dipped below the horizon. The waves crashed softly, seagulls called in the distance, and the sky blushed in shades of pink and orange. It was peaceful, exactly what I needed after months of the city's chaos. Inside, the house settled with its usual creaks and groans, sounds I'd always found comforting, until they suddenly didn't feel so familiar. The first 2 nights passed without incident. I'd wake with the dawn, drink coffee on the porch, and watch the seagulls wheel overhead. But on the 3rd night, everything changed. Around midnight, I woke up with a start. The usual soundtrack of crashing waves and nightbirds was gone. Instead, an eerie silence filled the air. I lay there for a moment, heart pounding, trying to tell myself it was just a coincidence. Maybe the tide was out farther than usual, or the birds had settled elsewhere. But when I peeked outside, the moonlight shimmered on the water, which lay unnervingly still. No ripples, no movement, just a glassy surface reflecting the stars. The ocean was silent. My eyes adjusted to the dark, and that's when I saw them. Footprints pressed deeply into the wet sand, leading away from the shoreline toward the house's back porch. Fresh footprints. Someone had been here. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer. Slowly, I stepped outside, the beam cutting through the night. The footprints ended at the back door, which was slightly open. I was sure I had locked it before going to bed. My heart raced as I closed and locked the door tightly. I checked every lock, every window. Everything seemed intact, yet the feeling of being watched lingered. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the living room couch, listening for any sounds, but all I heard was the soft whistle of wind through the cracks. The next morning, I tried to shake off the unease. While making breakfast, I noticed something odd on the kitchen counter. A small shell, smooth and pearly, unlike any I'd collected before. It hadn't been there when I went to bed. Later that day, I noticed the water in the fish tank looked murky and cold, even though the pump was running, and there'd been no power outage. The little goldfish swam sluggishly, as if sensing the tension too. That night, the silence returned, heavier this time. The absence of the ocean's usual murmur was deafening. As I lay in bed, a soft thud upstairs made me freeze. The house had no guests, no pets, nothing that should be making noises. I cautiously crept upstairs, flashlight in hand, heart pounding. The hall was empty, but as I passed each bedroom, the air grew colder, and a faint smell of salt and something faintly metallic lingered. Suddenly, the power cut out. The whole house plunged into darkness. My flashlight flickered, but I managed to keep it steady. From the darkness, a whisper floated down the hallway. "You shouldn't be here." I spun toward the staircase, the beam landing on a shadow slipping into the attic entrance. Gathering every ounce of courage, I followed the shadow up the narrow stairs. The attic was dusty and cramped, filled with forgotten trunks and old furniture draped in sheets. In the far corner, a weathered leather-bound journal lay on a wooden crate. I opened it carefully. The pages were yellowed, filled with scrawled handwriting detailing strange events. The silent tides, nights when the ocean seemed to disappear, taking with it anyone who ignored the house's warnings. The journal belonged to a man who once lived here decades ago, a man who vanished without a trace one of those silent nights. I read late into the night, chills crawling down my spine as I pieced together the house's dark secret. By dawn, I knew I couldn't stay another night. I packed quickly and left, casting one last look at the calm, unchanging ocean. Sometimes, when the waves are eerily still, I swear I hear the whisper carried on the breeze, and I know those silent tides are still waiting. What started as a simple getaway to a friend's luxurious beach house quickly turned into a nightmare none of us saw coming. Friendly faces, late-night drinks, and laughter, until two of my closest friends vanished in the dead of night. This is how our perfect weekend spiraled into a desperate fight for their lives. I'd been looking forward to this weekend for months, a chance to escape my routine and unwind at a beach house a friend of a friend owned on the Outer Banks in North Carolina. I'm Sarah, 24, recently graduated, working in marketing, and definitely overdue for a break. The house, Seabreeze, was a sprawling, two-story coastal property nestled among the dunes, just a stone's throw from the Atlantic. I didn't know the owner personally, my friend Matt had connections, but we were invited as part of a small group of 6. Matt, me, my college roommate Rachel, her boyfriend Luke, and 2 other friends, Carlos and Jenna. We arrived Friday afternoon, the air salty and warm, the sun casting a golden glow over the ocean. The house smelled of sea breeze mixed with aged cedar. Inside, it was spacious and modern, whitewashed walls, huge windows, and rustic nautical decor. We settled in quickly, unpacked, and decided to explore the private beach behind the dunes. The sand was cool and fine, the waves gentle. The first night, we had a casual dinner and shared stories, laughter flowing easily as the sun set. I felt relaxed, content. Saturday was perfect. We spent the day swimming, fishing off the nearby pier, and lounging on the deck. But as evening fell, an uneasy feeling crept in. Rachel mentioned she kept hearing footsteps on the floorboards upstairs, though we were all downstairs. Luke joked it was the beach ghost, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Later, while cooking dinner, I noticed the kitchen window was unlocked. Odd, because Matt swore he'd locked every door and window before we left that morning. I shrugged it off, but a knot tightened in my stomach. That night, we played board games until late. Around midnight, Jenna suddenly got up, saying she felt like someone was watching her from outside. We went to check, nothing but shadows cast by the moonlight. But when we returned, the power flickered. Phones lost signal. Matt suggested it was just a storm rolling in, but no rain came. Around 2 a.m., I woke to soft whispers. At first, I thought it was the ocean, but the words were indistinct, almost like a voice calling my name. I got up, grabbed a flashlight, and crept outside. The dunes were empty, but I found fresh footprints leading toward the neighboring beach house, which was supposed to be empty. I called out, "Silence." Back inside, Luke discovered the back door ajar. Panic set in. We locked down the house, barricading doors and windows. At dawn, we found deep scratch marks on the back door and muddy footprints trailing away into the dunes. We reported the incident to the local sheriff, who promised to patrol the area. The rest of the day was tense, the atmosphere thick with fear. Sunday night brought another chilling episode. A faint melody played on an old music box we found in the attic, but none of us knew where it came from. The melody echoed through the house, drawing us toward the basement. There, we found old photographs of a family who used to live in the house decades ago. The same family who mysteriously vanished, according to local legend. Suddenly, the basement door slammed shut. We were trapped. Using our combined strength, we forced it open, fleeing outside as the sun rose. Monday morning, we packed up, each shaken. But before leaving, Matt confided he'd found a hidden room behind the fireplace, filled with cryptic journals detailing strange rituals and warnings. The twist? The house was never just a summer retreat. It was built atop an old burial ground, cursed to trap anyone who dared disturb its secrets. As we drove away, the waves crashed ominously, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was still watching us.